Principles of Economics, my complete guide to understanding economics, is now available in hardcover, audiobook, and ebook from Saifedean.com, Amazon, and many more booksellers worldwide. And now I am also teaching a course based on this book on my website, Saifedean.com. Principles of Economics will run the whole academic year, from September to June, and will have a new lecture every 2 weeks, as well as weekly live online discussion seminars open to learners from all over the world and from all walks of life. Whether you're a student, a professional, or a retiree, you are making economic decisions every day, and this course will arm you with the wisdom of centuries of economists to improve your economic decision-making. You'll also get a free book of Principles of Economics if you sign up for the course, and if you do it before September 20th, you'll get a 20% discount. Go to Saifedean.com and sign up now. I'm happy to announce that I have set up my new publishing house and online bookstore, The Safe House, which will be publishing and delivering the best Bitcoin and Austrian economics books worldwide in hardcover, audiobook, and ebook formats. Go to thesafehouse.com to buy my latest book, Principles of Economics, as well as the Fiat Standard and the Bitcoin Standard. And now I'm also publishing Fiat Food, Matthew Lysiak's amazing investigation into how inflation ruined our diet and health. And I'm also publishing Lynn Alden's Broken Money, her masterful exploration of the failures of the global financial system and how Bitcoin fixes it. This is a Bitcoiner's bookshop, so the books are printed in beautiful cloth hardcover made to last, with a nice colored dust jacket on top. Go to thesafehouse.com and get yours now. Crowdhealth is the Bitcoiner's answer to fiat health insurance. If you listen to this show, you've probably heard me rail against the problems of modern healthcare and health insurance. Crowdhealth is a brilliant new solution to this problem that leverages the power of Bitcoin to help people get affordable healthcare. Crowdhealth holds its cash reserves in Bitcoin. It negotiates with healthcare providers on your behalf and gets you much better rates by offering to pay them cash, upfront, without having to go through the expensive bureaucracy of modern healthcare insurance. It's a solution that works better for healthcare providers and for patients by disintermediating large insurance companies who have the wrong incentives and are constantly raising costs. I'm very happy to have signed up for Crowdhealth, and I'm really excited to support them as they disrupt the fiat health insurance industry. Go to joincrowdhealth.com and use the discount code SAIF, S-A-I-F, and you'll get the first 6 months for $99 only. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Bitcoin Standard podcast. Our guest today is Andy Schoonover, the CEO of Crowdhealth. Crowdhealth is one of the sponsors of this podcast, and it is an innovative, remarkable startup, which I'm very happy to be associated with, which reimagines insurance and aims to disrupt massively the insurance industry as it currently exists in the United States, or more generally, the fiat health industry, or probably more accurately named the disease industry, which is the very large section of US GDP that goes toward making people sick, managing their sickness very profitably, securing very high returns from this. So Crowdhealth does things very differently. We've had Andy over previously, and we discussed their business model and why I like it so much. And now he's here to tell us more about their progress. They've been doing great since the last time, and they've also added Lightning integration. So Andy, thank you for joining us.
Safe, as always. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, man. So tell us, first of all, before we get into Lightning, tell us what's been new with Crowdhealth since the last time we spoke.
Yeah, I think that we're probably 3 or 4 times larger than we last spoke. And that was just, I think, around this time last year, if I'm correct. And so we've just had exciting growth. I think people are finally, getting to this conclusion. We're at a tipping point of people understanding that health insurance has been built to control them and not to benefit them. And so they really are paying money to someone who is not aligned with their interests. And so we're just getting incredible feedback, especially from Bitcoiners. It's amazing to me how the Bitcoin community has really backed us. And we've been trying to incorporate, Bitcoin philosophies for sure since the beginning, but also Bitcoin as a fundamental part of the tool. It's been incredible, feedback from that community, and all the bills have gotten paid and the people are happy, and it's just been a fun ride for the last year.
Yeah, definitely. And so give us a little bit of a brief overview of your model for people who didn't listen the last time. What is it that you guys do differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably worthwhile just talking about health insurance real quick, just to give you, contrast. Health insurance right now is you're paying money to a big Fortune 100 company, probably. They're putting that money into a big pool of fiat that is decreasing in value day by day, as we all know. And then they just get to decide what bills get paid and what bills are not paid. And so we have a principal agent problem here, because our agent, who's supposed to be on our side, actually benefits when our bills don't get paid. So there's a challenge there. There's some perverse incentives. On top of that, over a longer period of time, an intermediate to long period of time, they want the amount that you pay them to go up, so that the revenue goes up. And so they, over a long period of time, actually have an incentive for prices to go up, so they can charge more and more every year. So it is a sick care system. It's a disease care system. And so we set out to build something that got rid of some of those perverse incentives. So the way that we work is, you pay us $50 a month subscription fee to be a part of the platform. We use that to pay our bills. That's the only source of revenue that we have. So we actually have an incentive for you to stick around for a long period of time, so that you can pay us more subscription fees over, many, many months or years. And so that's aligned incentives with everybody. We try to keep you healthy. You pay us money. It's value for value. It's a perfect scenario. And then we ask you to pay, for an individual, an additional $125 to help somebody else out directly in the community. So if one of your fellow Bitcoiners gets sick, we would reach out to a bunch of Bitcoiners and say, hey, I actually was on Marty's podcast yesterday, and his son got a rock in his ear. And so it was a $1,300 procedure to get the rock out of Marty's son's ear. So we went to a bunch of Bitcoiners and said, would you help Marty? And if they said yes, then they transfer money from their Crowdhealth account to Marty's Crowdhealth account, so that Marty now has enough money to pay for his son's ear issue. So it is a peer-to-peer transaction without a third party getting involved in that. So we don't touch that money. We don't get involved in that at all. And so that's the beauty of this model, is not having somebody else, a middleman, rent seeker, if you will, capture value from the transfer of money from one person to another. Starting in 2024, historically, that's been over fiat rails. It's just the only way we could do it. Starting in early 2024, we are actually giving everybody on our Bitcoin community a Lightning wallet. We're using the Breeze SDK to incorporate that into our actual app. And so if, Saif has an issue that he needs help with, we're going to be sending an invoice to other people in the community to say, hey, we have a member that needs help with a broken arm. Will you transfer money or Bitcoin to that member? You can say yes. And if so, that goes from your wallet over the Lightning Network to Saif's. And so you, in essence, have enough money then in your Lightning wallet to pay for that broken arm. And so it's all done over Lightning. If for some reason your doctor doesn't want Bitcoin, and most won't to start, but we hope to more and more will along the way, you can off-ramp that and then pay it in fiat, or you can pay it in fiat and just allow that money to stay in your account. And it's a great transfer of fiat assets to Bitcoin assets. So we'll be starting that in 2024. Super excited about it. I think the circularity of Bitcoin needs to, expand, and I don't think there's a better way to start that than with healthcare. It's a $4.3 trillion industry in the United States. So if we can get just a little percentage, a small percentage, a few basis points off of that to start, we think that will go a long way to making Bitcoin a real usable, method of exchange.
Yeah, no, I think so. It's a brilliant idea. As I said, get fiat healthcare out of your body and get fiat money out of your wealth. Stop them from ruining your health and wealth. It's a double-pronged advantage. I should add, I think and obviously you think that as well. You told me that, but I'm going to add it here. A key part of what makes this click is besides just the fact that it's a voluntary organization where people decide whether they want to pay, which is very good incentives, because the insurance company has an incentive in subsidize in paying for things that is different from yours. They want to raise the bills that they cover, because the more that they pay, the more that they get to charge, because they have elements of a monopoly. But the difference here is you guys, you pay cash. You don't get into the insurance game. And so you just talk to the doctor and tell them, we're going to pay you cash on the spot, rather than put them through weeks, months, maybe years of wrangling with insurance companies, which are going to delay the payment quite a lot and make it a lot more complicated to get it through. So you just negotiate and you pay cash, and that's a huge deal, and that's a huge difference. And the reason this is a big difference is because, well, on the one side, for the doctor, this makes sense because they just get the cash and they can move on with their life. Whereas if they were dealing with an insurance company, they might get a lot more money nominally, but it takes time and it costs a lot of paperwork, and it's complicated to get it, and therefore it ends up taking so much of the doctor's time rather than the doctor working on curing patients. The doctor's out there negotiating with insurance companies all the time. So you save them a lot of hassle by just paying them cash, and they're happy to give you a discount for it. But of course, the reason this works is because of Bitcoin. I posit because if you didn't have Bitcoin, if a typical insurance company tried to do this, they'd have to have a lot of cash on hand, and if they had a lot of cash on hand, that's a problem because fiat cash is constantly declining in value. So they need to constantly be charging more and more because their fiat is declining. And this is where Crowdhealth is cheating effectively by holding part of your reserves in Bitcoin. You benefit from the fact that Bitcoin is not criminal money like fiat. It's not money that's designed to steal from you. It's money that's designed for your own good, not for the good of the government that issues it. And so therefore, your reserves appreciate over time, and therefore you're always sitting on liquid reserves, and therefore you are always able to just use these liquid reserves to pay doctors because you have a big pot of cash, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's even better than that because we don't even hold the reserves. It's you get to keep that money, right? So you're not sending it to a corporation to say, hey, I'm going to hold this just in case so that we can take care of you if something goes wrong. What we're saying is like, look, you need to keep that money and keep it in Bitcoin in your own wallet. It's yours. And if we need help with the community, we'll come out and reach out to you, and we'll ask you for help if the community has a big issue, but then you can decide yes or no if you want to give it to them. And so we don't even touch it, which is the beautiful thing about this. And you're right, we are cheating. And so there is no need to overcharge you for having this big pool of reserves when you can hold the pool of reserves yourself in your own account in a non-custodial fashion. We think that's kind of the brilliant component of this. If you have money in a pool of reserves that is declining in value, is not creating any return, that is a massively inefficient use of capital. That capital should be held by you in a way that you feel like is the most effective for you and your family to hold that. And we think that's in Bitcoin. And so that's why we're allowing Bitcoin members to do whatever they want with that dollars. For me, I have a family of four with CrowdHealth. For the crowdfunding component, it's about $5,000 a year. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put $5,000 in my Bitcoin wallet at the beginning of the year. And that will be enough to pay for my family over the entire year. And then what happens if that Bitcoin goes from whatever we're at today, $37,000 to 60 or 70 or 100 over the next year? I get 100% of that upside. That value goes to me and my family, right? If I had that money in an insurance company, the insurance company gets all that value, not me. And so we want you to benefit from that. And if you think Bitcoin is going up over the next year, which I think most of us do, right? Especially with the halving in April and things like that's going on, like I'm going to stick that money in Bitcoin. I'm going to transfer a fiat asset to a Bitcoin asset. And let's see that value increase over the next, year. And I think, I can plant that seed now, and I may never have to pay for healthcare again if Bitcoin does what we think Bitcoin can actually do by just making that little investment here up front. And that's what I get super, super excited about. It is massively more efficient than sending fiat to, United Healthcare and letting them hold it in a bank account somewhere and see it decline in value. So I think we can kind of revolutionize healthcare by utilizing Bitcoin as that method of exchange. And so that's why we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah. You launched, I mean, the timing has so far worked out well for you. I think you launched, it was close to the top when Bitcoin was very high when you first launched. But then over time, the price of Bitcoin went down. And so that might have seemed terrible for a while, but that's when you were growing and acquiring most of your customers. So they started stacking most of them at low levels. And we started the sponsorship with this podcast around last year when Bitcoin was around 15,000, 16,000 or something like that. So it's now up more than 100%. We've more than doubled in a year. So
yeah, most of the funds that went into the Crowd Health were somewhere in that $17,000 to $26,000 range. It was in the 20s there for a while. Then it went up to 70. Then it kind of came back down to 17 or whatever. And so most of the Bitcoin that was, again, transferred from fiat to Bitcoin. This is not. I don't want to take your stack and use your stack for this. What I'm saying is like you have a line item of expenses that you're currently using fiat. What I want to do is transfer that line item of expenses from using fiat to be using Bitcoin. So you're transferring fiat assets to Bitcoin assets. And in the perfect world, at least from my perspective, I think in your perspective as well, I want all my assets eventually transferred to Bitcoin assets. Right. Like we got to take steps in that. And so that's what's, gets me fired up about this. In the United States, the number 2 expense for most people other than their mortgage is their healthcare. Like if we can take the number 2 expense for people and transfer it to a Bitcoin exchange, I think, man, that is tremendous progress in my mission to make this a Bitcoin economy as opposed to a fiat economy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree entirely. I think this is really the way that it's done. Can you give us an idea about how much the average Crowdhealth member is up on their stack so far? Do you have numbers on that?
I mean, I think it's somewhere between 30 and 40%.
Yeah, that's fascinating because, I mean, no insurance company has managed to make 30 or 40% on its holdings over the last year or two, right? I mean, the vast majority of insurance companies, I presume, well, maybe not even the vast majority, I think all of them are required to hold a very large chunk of their assets in government bonds, because, risk-free, safe and effective government bonds. Which have been getting murdered on the markets over the last couple of years. This is another reason why your insurance premium is going up. Obviously, the insurance company, we spoke extensively about the perverse incentive they have for upping the bills. And of course, doctors and medical providers have an incentive to raise the bills as well. But beyond just that, everything is rising in price because the value of the money is going down. And the vast majority of investors cannot beat inflation. And if they can, they beat it for a year or 2 or 3 or 4, but they can't do it consistently. And so insurance companies are constantly losing on their portfolios, or maybe not constantly losing, but they're definitely not making Bitcoin style gains. And that's why they are in deep trouble. And that's why they have to keep raising the deductible and raising the copay and raising the amount that you have to pay to get on their plans. And that's why that also feeds into higher fees for the doctors and so on. So it's really remarkable. I think that there is a case to be made that insurance itself is not really something that would exist in a hard money economy, or maybe would exist at a much, much, much smaller scale, because money is insurance. That's what money is. The whole point of having money is that you don't know what the future contains, that you don't know what the future holds for you. And so therefore you keep money because of uncertainty. We've discussed this. I've discussed this in my books. There's also that great paper by Hans Hermann Hoppe called The Yield on Money Held Reconsidered. And it's something that keeps getting repeated in Rothbard and Mises' work. The reason people hold money is because of uncertainty. If there was no uncertainty, if you knew the future 100%, you wouldn't need to hold money. You would have your investments, you would have all your money invested, and then you'd be able to liquidate your money whenever you need it from these investments. Oh, or you would plan it so that the investments run out at the time that you need to have your expenditures. But then, of course, your expenditures are uncertain, and so you need liquid assets that can be disposed of very quickly without having to liquidate things and sell things that are not liquid. And so, therefore, people hold money. And if the money held on to its value over time, if the money was hard, then over time, yeah, if you get into a car accident, you need money. If you get sick, you need money. Well, that's what you save for. And imagine if we'd gone through a world in which we'd had generations upon generations of people saving because their money did not suck, then we would live in a world in which most people would have enough savings that they'd be able to provide for themselves. And then they'd also be able to provide for those less lucky who don't have savings, because there'd be a lot of people who have a lot of wealth, so they'd be able to provide for charity. So I'm not so sure how much insurance itself would thrive in a world in which we have a hard money. The way that I see it is that we're going to head toward that, because most likely what we're going to see is that insurance companies are going to realize Bitcoin is a great asset for them to hold on their balance sheet, because it's outperforming most of the other assets that they hold on their balance sheets. And I think people are also going to arrive at that independently by realizing that instead of paying all of that money to my insurance company, if I just stack sats, then I'll end up being able to afford better healthcare if I just pay cash. And I think joining something like Crowdhealth is a great example of a transition between the first and the second, between the insurance system and a hard money system, because there's an element of community that alleviates the risk. Because if you don't have a lot of money, particularly today, healthcare is so expensive in the US. Well, if you're joining in a system where you help others, then they can also help you. They can cover the downside in case there is a very massive negative shock. But over time, who knows? Maybe Bitcoin obsoletes it.
Hey, if Bitcoin obsoletes the insurance business, I would cheer. If that means that Bitcoin then would next obsolete my business, I think we could also cheer. I think that ultimately what I'm trying to do is create a company that I think truly alleviates suffering in many ways, in at least my country, the United States. And if we can alleviate that suffering in the interim, like that's ultimately what I'm trying to do. We have a system currently, a fiat system, that even though that you have insurance, we have something like 200 to 250,000 families every year going bankrupt, even though they have health insurance due to a medical event, right? Going bankrupt due to a medical event, which that's just not right, right? It's not right. And we have something like 70 or 80 million Americans additionally that have healthcare debt on their credit cards. And so these are things that only I think occur within a fiat world, that I think would be solved in a Bitcoin world. And if we can be, helping that transition, we would be, excited about that. So, this is a missional thing for me. I hire missionaries, not mercenaries, people who are truly in this for the mission. I put something on Twitter the other day. It's like most of the people who have joined Crowdhealth are not doing this because, it's cheaper, although it is cheaper than traditional health insurance. It's because we have a bunch of people who are on mission and want to be a part of that revolution. And so we almost get nobody cancel. We get hardly any. I can count on, two hands almost the amount of people that we lose on a monthly basis within the Bitcoin community. And so, if you're on mission and you're interested in being with a group of people, a community of people, a tribe of people who are on mission with you to expand the use of Bitcoin, then, come and join us. I think the cool thing about us also is we have this group of Bitcoiners who are all funding each other's health expenses. So if you think about, not only is the payment system better, because as you mentioned, we're getting doctors cash at the point of care, or Bitcoin at the point of care, and therefore we're getting 30, 40, 50% better, better rates than health insurance plans. Plus, we have a group of people who actually are taking self-sovereignty, are sovereign over their health, are sovereign over their behavior, and aren't victimized by, everything that you can be victimized by, that group of people is going to act better, more aligned with the community than a group of fiat actors. And so, these things multiply themselves. You have fewer health events at a lower price. That's multiplicative. And therefore, that's why the rate for what you can get on Crowd Health is significantly better than what you get on, United Healthcare. So you're getting both benefits here, a better money benefit and a better behavior benefit, which just reduces costs significantly. And what we think is people will be incentivized to take better care of themselves, to be a part of our community, because you gotta be in decent shape. You can't be over 240 pounds. You can't be a smoker. You can't be, acting with some of these bad behaviors to be a member of the group. And so you are actually paying for other people's health events that most of the time they just got the raw end of the deal. It's just things happen, life happens. And we got a lot of mountain biking face plants, a lot of active injuries, and a lot of babies. Like those are the two biggest expenses. It's not a lot of illnesses. It's a lot of people reproducing and are out in the sun being active, and stuff just happens when you're out moving your body and you're active. But overall, those illnesses are very, very low. We just have, active injuries and babies that most of these people are paying for. And wouldn't you prefer to pay for that than pay for some of these other things that you're paying for with traditional insurance, which is, these drugs that, are taken to lose weight, these surgeries that are taken to lose weight. Most plans in the United States are required to pay for transgender, transitioning. Like, do you want to be paying for that, or do you want to be paying for other Bitcoiners, babies, and, crap that happens when they're out being active and taking care of themselves? Like that to me is an obvious answer. And so, that's the great kind of part about what we're doing.
Yeah, and like with most of these active injuries, people will break an arm or a leg and they'll be out of action. They can't bike or play basketball for a couple of months, but then they're back on their feet and then they're back being healthy and productive again. Most of the things that fiat insurance pays for are forever, basically. Once you've gotten obese and diabetic, it's for the vast majority of people, it's just a one-way road to getting more and more obese and more diabetic and less functional and more sick and more expensive. And it's always been astonishing to me just how much low-hanging fruit there is out there for insurance companies to reduce their costs if they just incentivize good behavior. But you don't see that. You don't see them telling people, hey, quit eating sugar and processed food and carbs and seed oils, and that will reduce your health. It's astonishing because you would expect, again, the classic way of thinking about it is that these insurance companies pay more money the more sick you are. So the sicker you get, the more they have to pay money. So then it's in their incentive to keep you healthy. You'd expect they'd provide you all kinds of incentives for you to behave in a healthy way, for them to pay less and less money. You'd expect that people talk about all of this surveillance that we have. Insurance companies could probably figure out everything that you're buying just through all of the surveillance that they have access to if they get into what you're using your credit card for. And it's very simple for them to figure out what kind of food you're eating, how much you're drinking, what bad habits you have, whether you're smoking or not, how many times you go and have breakfast at IHOP, how many times you go out drinking late at night. They can get that information relatively easily, and they could incentivize you to behave well by basing your rate based on that. So every time you drink, your rates go up slightly. That would offer people a lot of very good incentives. But you don't see any of that, and it's puzzling until I spoke to you, and then I understood the regulatory reasons which drive insurance companies to want you to get more and more sick so that they can charge more and more money, because the more money they charge, the more money they make, because they are essentially in a monopoly, or they have a large degree of monopolization in their field. And there are all these regulations that you mentioned last time which make these their incentives. And because of Bitcoin, you can just
opt out of all of that. You can actually make that the system. You tell people you can't join us if your BMI is too high. That's it. And that's just the biggest source of costs eliminated. So you're cheating again by just simply going with people who don't get very sick because they don't do the things that are likely to make you very sick, and makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, we've got multiple examples, and it's not even just anecdotal. It's like we have a significant number of examples where people were like, I wanted to be a member of Crowdhealth, but I was over the weight limit, and so I made behavioral changes so that I could be a part of the community. And so what we're seeing is if you take sovereignty over your own healthcare expenses, ultimately the bill is your expense. You tend to take more sovereignty over your actual body and your health, right? And that's ultimately what we need, is everybody to be able to take sovereignty over their own health. Whereas right now we're outsourcing it to insurance companies. We're just saying, okay, well, if we're not healthy and we get sick, an insurance company is going to pay for it. What happens if you say, hey, if I'm not healthy and I get sick, I have to pay for it? There's an incentive structure there that says, hey, I need to be going to the gym. I need to be working out. I need to be watching what I put into my body. And so there is a self-sovereignty over this that I think has significant behavioral changes. Another interesting one was we had a member who had colon cancer, or has colon cancer. And I'm pretty sure he was a part of the Bitcoin community. He came to us and he said, listen, I have colon cancer. I want the best care possible, but I don't want to screw my community. And so would you help me find doctors who will treat me great, but will also not price gouge me? And so we did. And, praise God, like it looks like, his colon cancer, which you don't hear this very often, is not going to, end up killing him. And so got him great doctors, great care at a reasonable price, all because, one, he took sovereignty over his own health, but two, he was in a community of people who, if I misbehave, who am I screwing in Crowdhealth? Well, myself, because I'm ultimately responsible for my bill, but also Safe and Marty and Jimmy and Robert and all these people who I know they're a part of my community and love. I'm screwing somebody who's a part of my own community, not a big health insurance plan. In a health insurance company, if you have a health event, like you want to extract as much value out of that system as possible. But now that you're in a community of your own tribe, it's your own family, if you will, you don't want to screw them. And so you want to act in a very, very different way. And so all of these incentives within Crowdhealth are aligned with better outcomes for us as individuals, therefore better outcomes with the community. And it's just something you don't see with health insurance. And ultimately, I think that is the problem that we have in our country with the healthcare system that we have, is nobody's incentivized to take care of themselves, because you don't ultimately bear the cost, either communally or fiscally bear the costs. And so we've solved that with Crowdhealth. You have this little crowd of people. It's your tribe. Don't screw your own community. Like, that's just a shitty thing to do.
The syllabus for my new online economics course, Principles of Economics, is now available on Saifedean.com. The course will take place over 18 lectures, each based on one chapter from my new book, Principles of Economics, which will be available for free as an ebook for everyone registering for the course. Lectures will be released once every 2 weeks on Mondays, starting on the 25th of September 2023, and will be available in video and audio format. Live discussion seminars will be held once a week on Thursdays at alternating time slots, 12 hours apart, to ensure learners can attend from all over the world. I'm happy to announce that I have set up my new publishing house and online bookstore, The Safe House, which will be publishing and delivering the best Bitcoin and Austrian economics books worldwide in hardcover, audiobook, and ebook formats. Go to thesafehouse.com to buy my latest book, Principles of Economics, as well as the Fiat Standard and the Bitcoin Standard. And now I'm also publishing Fiat Food, Matthew Lysiak's amazing investigation into how inflation ruined our diet and health. And I'm also publishing Lynn Alden's Broken Money, her masterful exploration of the failures of the global financial system and how Bitcoin fixes it. This is a Bitcoiner's bookshop, so the books are printed in beautiful cloth hardcover made to last, with a nice colored dust jacket on top. Go to thesafehouse.com and get yours now. Yeah, and it's a hugely impactful. I think an enormous amount of people who can't motivate themselves, and an enormous part of the reason that many people can't motivate themselves is the absence of
belonging to a group or feeling that there are others out there that care for you, that want you to be better. And I think psychologically, it's actually extremely powerful. I remember this moment very well. Once I was playing soccer and I was on a team. We were winning. It was the last 5 minutes or so. And I pulled up with a cramp, and it was extremely painful. And generally when you get a cramp, you think that's it, that the game is over. You can't play anymore. And so I lay down on the ground and I thought, all right, that's it. My team is, and we didn't have any more subs. So I thought the team's going to have to finish this job the last 5 minutes without me. And I was just in pain. And then the team captain looks at me and says, "Get up, we need you." And immediately my foot got better and I was able to finish the game. I think a big part of this is just feeling that other people need you, gets your body to tap into another level. It gets you to care, it gets you psychologically interested, and it's just feeling like you're part of something, part of a group that cares about you. I think it's a huge difference, and I think that's something that you don't get from regular Fiat insurance, because they're out there, they're just looking to pump up your bill as much as they can, because the bigger the bill, the bigger they can, the more money they can make.
Yeah. And in essence, they want healthcare to be expensive, because if it wasn't expensive, you wouldn't need them. Right. So they are perpetuating an expensive structure because it makes them relevant. I think, your community thing is right on. I mean, ultimately, unfortunately, and I think this is one of the catalysts for the decline in morale in our country generally, is in the 1970s, we had government and insurance companies coming in between us and our neighbor, so that they basically say, hey, you don't have to take care of your neighbor anymore. You don't have to help them. You don't have to love them well. We got them. The government's got them. Government's going to step in here and take care of everything, so you don't have to. And so that sense of community, I think, in our country has gotten eroded over time, because we just look at the government and say, oh, well, you're going to take care of them. Like, honestly, when I go by a guy on the side of the road who is panhandling for money, my initial thought is, and I'm being honest, is like, okay, well, there's got to be some government service for them, right? Like, there's a government thing there, right? Like, why doesn't the government take care of them? When in reality, the reaction should be like, no, that dude's a part of my community. Like, how do I help him as a member of the community, as opposed to just relying upon the government, who does an absolutely horrific job at it? Whereas we as a community could be way, way better, but we have gotten psyoped into thinking that all the bad stuff that happens in our country, the government can take care of, as opposed to our community can take care of, right? And I think it needs to go back to, we need to get back to being community. And we're doing that within the healthcare space, and albeit in a digital way. You were at our Bitcoin conference happy hour, and we had somewhere between 100 and 150 people there who were all part of the Crowdhealth community. And you could tell they're like, we're kind of fired up to be a part of this group of people who are helping each other with our healthcare. And it's my Bitcoin people. Like, these are my people. Like, this is the part of the community that I want. And I think a lot of the more moral decline, whether it be, in suicide or, health decline or, obesity, you can go on and on and on, I think is a direct result of us. We just don't feel like we're a part of something. We don't think we're a part of a community. And I think primarily that's because government has blown up communities in our country. So anyway, that's my rant. But
no, that's a very, very good point. In the Fiat Standard and the Bitcoin Standard, discuss how fiat money undermines the family. And that you can see it because it used to be that family is the primary mechanism for providing for people when they're too young or too old or too sick. And that's why life is it's not a single player game. It's a family player game. You play life on a family. If you don't have a family when you're very young, you're likely not going to make it. And throughout life, you likely get many of these instances where you need the support of a family. And the way that families do that is through saving. The way you save and you pass on your savings through generations. And the idea is to try and increase savings as much as you can. And that's what allows families to take care of each other. So then fiat money comes along. It destroys our ability to save, but it enhances the government's ability to provide. And so now the job that was the job of the family to provide for you when you're sick or when you're young or when you're old, that's now being taken over by the people who can take away your wealth.
because they have all the wealth, and so they get to decide. And that's why people start to think of their government as their family. And that's why government is responsible for your kids, government is responsible for you when you're old. And so the incentive to invest in family financially and emotionally and in all ways is undermined. And I think you could make the same point about community. I didn't discuss this in my book, and it just occurs to me. I just heard it from you right now, but I think you could also say the same thing. A lot of these jobs that were community-based, or a lot of these tasks that were community-based, like, say, if there's a homeless guy, well, what do we do about this guy in our community that is homeless? How do we stop him from living in the street? How do we stop this guy from being sick when he has nobody to take care of him? Well, that's what a community is for. You live in a neighborhood, you don't want to see people being destitute and dying around you, and you'd rather they live in a better way. And so if everybody has savings, it becomes easier for people in the community to take care of each other. But when you all don't have savings because our savings are constantly being devalued, and we're all in debt because that's the only way to survive in a fiat system, and we all have to pay mortgages or get kicked out on the road again. First of all, homelessness becomes more common because a lot of people are going to miss a couple of mortgage payments, and then they're going to end up on the street. And secondly, when they end up on the street, we don't have a lot of savings to support them. And so then we just end up voting for people that are going to promise us that they're going to take care of them. So, yeah, I'm going to destroy your money so that I will take care of your neighbor rather than just letting you have the money. And it's the only way this is going to be reversed is online. And I think the Bitcoin is going to be a pivotal part of this because it's allowing us to rebuild communities without having to be in the same physical space with one another, because we can all interact online and we can find the things that are common between us online, and we can build a community. And then you see that happening with Bitcoiners across all kinds of axes of interaction. And I think this Crowdhealth is a beautiful example of these things, because that's it. You've snapped out of the fiat programming, and now you understand that your health is in your hand, and you want to take care of your health, and you want to do the best that you can. And then if you find a community of people that think that way, then you're able to join them on that quest. I think it's very, very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think, the thing that came to mind when you were talking through this is like, how did we get here? How is the government able to do this, basically successfully in their mind? And I think a lot of it is what, just an idea that I've learned from your books, which is this low time preference versus high time preference view of the world, right? It's much easier for us to outsource our responsibilities to a government because now we're no longer responsible for it. That is a high time preference approach to the world. And we've now gotten to where we have gotten, which is a decay of the family, a decay of communities. Whereas if we would have taken a low time preference approach, which is, hey, we as community have to take on the responsibility for each other. That's much harder to do. It takes a little bit more of my time and my effort. And I want to make this relevant to the conversation around insurance too, because I think a lot of people are so kind of, again, psyoped into thinking that insurance is the only way. And how does that work in our country? Well, we have a little card in our wallet that we go to the doctor and we give them a card. And so we don't have to think about it, worry about it until, weeks or months later when the bill shows up and it's significantly higher than it would have been if we had worried about it, at the time of care. And so now we're stuck with huge bills from insurance companies that we don't have any place, any ability to negotiate. And so what we're asking you to do as with Crowd Health is, press the hard button, press the high time or the low time preference button, and do the work at the time of care so that we can get you really good rates so that you don't have to deal with this later. And so it's so much of like the just decay of the monetary system, the moral system, everything is this high time preference approach to life, which satisfies you in the moment, I can go have, Twizzlers now and it satisfies me now, but my body is going to be impacted for years and years to come with, if that's a recurring situation. And so just so much of it, I should call crowd health a low time preference health. Like if I can get a group of people who have low time preference, then you can fundamentally change your expense structure in your home, the composition of your body and how it lasts, when you're 80 years old, because I want people when they're 80 years old to be able to run around the backyard with their grandkids, as opposed to sitting in a wheelchair, and the only way to get there is a low time preference approach to life, and so I want our members to live hard and die fast. Like I want you to live really, really well for the next 40 or 50 years. I'm 44. So 40 or 50 years and then die fast. Like I want to die in my sleep and not wake up, as opposed to dying in a nursing home, being there for 3 years in a slow decay, And so that's like my mission behind Crowd Health is like, let's change the cost structure of healthcare. Let's do it utilizing Bitcoin, and let's get a group of people who have low time preference approaches so that in 40 or 50 years, we don't have these chronic conditions. We don't have congestive heart failure, diabetes, cardiovascular issues. And like, man, if we could put those three things together, like I think we can change America to be thriving again, And so that's my mission behind this is, can we motivate people to be better with their healthcare, be better with their money, be better with their nutrition and their wellness. And man, if you can put those three things together, you got something magical. So that's ultimately what we're trying to do within one organization. Maybe it's naive to think we can do it, but great things happen from, naive, approaches. I think Satoshi probably was like back in the day, was like, maybe I'm being naive to think that this could take over the world. And here we are, $1 trillion of market cap later from a what many people could consider a naive, approach to the monetary system. So, hopefully we look back a decade from now and be like, maybe that wasn't as naive as he thought. It was actually, a really cool thought that a lot of people can get behind. So the fact that I'm on your podcast with, one of the best known names in Bitcoin who can talk about this, I think is even testament to like, hey, there's something to this. Like there's something to the incentive structure that motivates people to take better care of their money and take better care of their health. Like there's something to this.
Oh, I agree entirely. And I think the key thing is I guess the answer of whether you're being completely delusional in thinking that you can make a big change or not is to look at the margin. They say the road of 1,000 miles starts with a step. It's always one step. And so you just got to look at the step. Are you at least walking in the right direction? If it's 1,000 miles and if you're on the right direction, then it'll happen eventually. You just need to keep walking. And this is what we see. Like we see this already with Bitcoiners. Even before Crowd Health came along, you're not the first person to notice that Bitcoiners get into all kinds of low time preference ideas. So as you see, they care a lot more about diet. A lot of people lose weight when they find Bitcoin. A lot of people get married when they find Bitcoin. A lot of people have kids when they find Bitcoin. And it's I don't think it's a coincidence, and I don't think it's just confirmation bias. I think it's something that many people report on a first-hand in a conscious way. Like once you've figured out that you can use this thing to save for the future, it provides you a sense of security in the future that makes the future less and less uncertain. And then you start thinking about the future and you start prioritizing it. And then you get into this cycle of you provide for the future. And then when the future comes along, things are better because of what you did in the past. And then you start wanting to do more better things for your future self. And then it's kind of like how people's life can spiral out of control. It's the exact opposite. It starts spiraling into control because it's almost like an addiction. You want to sacrifice enjoyment today because you want to see how good tomorrow can be. And so you quit drinking, you quit drugs, you quit all kinds of bad habits, and you focus on doing good things. So good job.
It's amazing to see that. It's one of the most shocking things. I've only been in Bitcoin for 3 or 4 years now, but like you see that once you step into Bitcoin and go down that rabbit hole, like so many different aspects of your life improve as a result of that. And I think it is fundamentally this low time preference approach that Bitcoiners have to life, that an investment now is going to impact you in the future and multiply the impact. And so it's a beautiful thing to see and watch. And that's why I think why we've been so successful is we've got a group of people who live that way and their expenses reflect that. And so that's a pretty cool part of this.
Yes, fantastic. Okay, now let's get back to Lightning. So what is it that you guys are doing with Lightning? How have you integrated Lightning exactly?
Yeah, so right now, everybody who with Crowdhealth has a Crowdhealth app on your phone, and we have integrated a Lightning wallet into that app. And so, instead of doing the funding of expenses over the fiat rails, which by the way is super slow and super expensive to do. Like the exchange fees is something like 3%. So you lose 3% of your value every time you exchange, funds with somebody else. We get rid of that. And if you're doing it over ACH, it takes somewhere like 3 to 6, sometimes even longer than that days to settle. Over Lightning, you get the money immediately. And so the more and more I've dove into the fiat rails, the more I realize that the Bitcoin rails, if you will, the Lightning rails are just wickedly more efficient than what we can do on the fiat side, right? And so it's like, it just makes tons of sense to now exchange funds over Lightning as opposed to doing it over the fiat rails. And so, fundamentally the way that this works is that, we will send you a message on our app that says you have a request from a member of the Bitcoin community. Here is the request. It's for a knee replacement, whatever, a baby. Here's how much it's for. Here is the 2 scores that we have for this bill. And so let me walk through those to make sure that people understand this. One is, has this member been a good member of the community in the past? So if I were to being asked for funds from Safe and everybody else, you will know, have I been a good member? Have I helped other people in the community? So, the last 10 requests, have I said yes, 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 yes to people? Or have I said no, 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 no to people, right? And if I've said yes, 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 then it's easy for me to give to somebody else who's been a really good member of that community. If I've said no, 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 then I'm not going to give to somebody who's a bad member of the community. And so this is a kind of a policing function of the community that good community members typically get their, or have always 100%, have gotten their health events funded. Bad members of the community haven't got their health events funded. So it's a great policing mechanism here. The second score that I give you is, did somebody pay a ridiculous amount of money for this service? So unfortunately, I was in the ER about 3 weeks ago. I'm fine. Everything is good. But I got the bill about a week ago, maybe it's 10 days ago. And I now have a itemized list of all the things that I paid for. And let me give you an example of one that's ridiculous. Everybody has seen an IV, it's the bag hanging up on the metal stand. That bag, what's in that bag, if it's a hydration IV, cost about $3. I got billed $5,400 for that bag of salt water. Right. And so
Wow.
I got a decision to make. Do I want to submit that to the community at $5,400 for the $3 bag of IV, or do I want to negotiate it? Right. If I submit that bag for $5,400, Crowdhealth flags something to the community and says, this is an egregious bill. And so you can decide if you want to pay it or not, but this is a red flag, egregious bill, way too much. This person is not treating your money like it's their money, right? That's my one option. Or I could give this to Crowdhealth and I can say, hey, Crowdhealth, will you negotiate this for me? And Crowdhealth will then go and give this to a team of attorneys and reach out to the hospital and say, this is price gouging. This is unfair and deceptive practices. You will get sued if you continue down this route of trying to overcharge people for a bag of salt water. And therefore, we are able to negotiate that bill down significantly, right? And so if I take that option, then I'll go back to the Crowdhealth community and say, hey, this bill was negotiated. So those are the 2 things that you get. And that's to help like a little bit police the bills, right? Like we want you to treat your money, other people's money, like it's your money, So you get that request. You can say yes to that request or no to that request. If you say yes, then Bitcoin is transferred from your Lightning wallet to their Lightning wallet. And ultimately, you'll have enough money in that Lightning wallet to either pay the bill directly via Lightning, or you can off ramp it to fiat and pay it, or you can just keep the money in your Lightning wallet and pay it in fiat. And then you're basically have just transferred assets from fiat to Lightning. So you have an option. The way I've talked about it to my wife, who is not a Bitcoiner, it's like, hey, if we all had Venmo wallets and we had a health event, right? People Venmo'd us a bunch of money so that we had enough in our Venmo wallet to go and pay for that health event. Then we have a decision. We can do whatever we want. We can, pay it directly out of Venmo. We can suck it back down into our bank account and then pay it, or we could just keep it in our Venmo account. It's kind of the same thing. But in essence, what we're doing is we're giving you a wallet, a healthcare wallet that you can, collect these dollars, and then you have enough Bitcoin. You can pay it in Bitcoin or do whatever you want with it. So we give people a lot of flexibility around that. And thus far, I think we just crowdfunded Bill like 10,000 or something like that. It's worked every time effectively. And like I said earlier, we're getting our members about 50% better rates than what health plans are paying for the exact same service, which is incredible. That just shows you that United Healthcare, being, I think, the 7th largest company in the world by revenue, doesn't actually have much negotiating power. Me and you as individuals have significantly more negotiating than United Healthcare does, which is astounding.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think it's so much that they don't have the negotiating power as much as it is the incentives. They don't have the incentive to negotiate your thing down. Would you say that's the case?
I think it's both. I mean, it's one of those things where, we have two hospitals in Austin. And so United Healthcare comes in and they have to have both of those hospitals, those big hospital systems, where they lose access to everybody in Austin. And so they come in, and even if they wanted to negotiate, right, the hospital will be like, no, you can't, because it's a duopoly. I mean, you're negotiating against a duopoly. And they're like, okay. And they don't really fight it. And so prices go up as a result of that. So they don't have a lot of negotiating power, and they don't really want to negotiate. They kind of have to act like they want to negotiate just to keep face. But that's ultimately, you and I, like I said, I mean, the hospital, let's just say the worst case scenario, like a NICU baby or an auto accident. And the bill is $1 million, right? The bill being $1 million, the hospital then has a decision to make. They can bill us for $1 million, which would put us into bankruptcy, or they can negotiate. And so 99 times out of 100, they're going to negotiate because they want a reasonable, payout from that bill. So that's the negotiating power that you have as an individual.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, what else have you guys got planned? What are your plans for going forward? Any other surprises you've got lined up? Any things you want to tell us?
Oh, we got all kinds of good stuff coming up in 2024. I mean, other than the Lightning Wallet, which is a big one for us, and we think is going to create, significant, value for our customers. The other thing we're doing is we're building a database of Bitcoin docs. Sorry, Saif, my dogs are fighting. So we have a database of Bitcoin docs that we're creating. And so one of the things that I think is impactful here is if we can have the demand and the supply of payers in Bitcoin and people who will accept Bitcoin on the doctor side, I think you got something pretty special. And so what we're trying to do is create a database of doctors who will accept Bitcoin. And so if you are in, let's just say Dallas, and you want to go to a doc that is a Bitcoin doc and will accept Bitcoin, then we will provide you with that doc. And so what is the benefit of that? One is you can pay them in Lightning, in Bitcoin. The second is I think Bitcoin doctors act differently than fiat doctors, meaning that if you have a Bitcoin doc, you're going to, from my experience, get to the underlying issue of what's going on as opposed to just addressing the symptoms. I think fiat docs use pharma first and, wellness second. What I've seen from Bitcoin docs is they go to wellness first. Like, what can we change in your diet? What can we change in your exercise routine, your sleep habits, things like that, versus going to pharma first. And so I think creating a database of doctors who are accepting Bitcoin is a pretty cool component of getting, better healthcare in this country. We have the best doctors in the world, I think. However, we do have doctors that have been trained to go to a pharma first type of solution as opposed to a wellness and a diet first solution. So that's one of the huge benefits of using us.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. I think, the doctor that has figured out Bitcoin is almost certainly smarter than the doctor who has not. Let's face it. It's just, it's basic math. I mean, if you can get your head around Bitcoin, then you got it. And so, and then you're right. It's going to reflect on all these behaviors. They're going to be more low time preference. They're going to be more future oriented. They're going to be more prevention oriented. There's an Arabic saying, spending a little bit on prevention is better than spending an enormous amount on cure. And it's all over, but doctors don't do it. It's one of the most astonishing things. You walk into the doctor's office and you tell them, look, I've got this problem. And it's very obvious that this problem is caused by eating food or making certain lifestyle choices. And the vast majority of doctors will not pick that low-hanging fruit of telling you, hey, you better stop waking up every morning and stuffing your mouth with garbage all day and then going to bed. Find another way to live your life that doesn't involve endless quantities of garbage. And you're going to see a lot of improvement. But there's no pill to be sold with that. It's a lot more profitable. Just telling them, keep at it. And keep having the pill. I was just hearing from a friend recently who had a problem, went to several doctors, and the first couple of doctors, they were all they told him, yeah, you've got this problem. And he said, all right, anything I can do to change it? Anything I should look out for? Things that I should or shouldn't eat? And the doctor just said, you know what? Maybe, but if you just take this pill, you can eat whatever you want. So don't worry about it. Everybody wins.
This pill now, right, that we're seeing out there, for whatever it's called,
Ozempic,
that's what it is, but people are losing Ozempic. Yeah, right. Because you can take Ozempic and you can lose weight. The problem with that is that you also lose muscle mass. So if you lose muscle mass while you're losing weight, in fact, you're becoming even fatter afterwards because your body composition has declined. And the number one indicator of whether you're going to live to 80 or 90 years old is your muscle mass. And so it's one of these things. Again, it's a high time preference solution to a problem that should be a low time preference problem.
Absolutely. It's so prevalent. It's sad, but I think Crowdhealth can change this. So anybody listening, if you're a doctor and you're into Bitcoin, get in touch with Crowdhealth. Maybe you could be one of their service suppliers. All right, we've got another question from Thomas. Thomas is saying, usually hospitals decide to treat you for an emergency based on your insurance subscription status. How does that work if you need urgent care as a member of Crowdhealth? So if you show up at a hospital and you're sick or something, some emergency has happened, you don't have an insurance card, so that makes them think that you're a high-risk patient. So what do?
Yeah, it's actually illegal in the United States to treat anybody different based upon their insurance status. And so, yeah, it's illegal to do that. What I found is, again, I was in the hospital, I don't know, 4 weeks ago. What I have found, though, is that they actually will give me choices. Where in insurance, they do whatever they can do to maximize revenue. For me, it was a choice. And so, and I'll give you one example. I went in because I was having trouble talking, of all things. It was weird. They thought I was potentially having a stroke. And in fact, what it was a complex migraine. But the doctor came to me, he's like, look, since you're uninsured, I want to just tell you something. Like, what I normally would do here is give you this medication. And this medication is $40,000. So do you want this medication or don't want this medication? And ultimately I asked him, I said, well, what is it? And what are the side effects? And he's like, well, it's, XYZ. And the side effects are, it could stop any brain bleeding that you have. But in some situations, it actually creates brain bleeds. And so do you want to take this medication? And I'm like, do I have a brain bleed? Do you think I have a brain bleed? He's like, I'm pretty sure you don't have a brain bleed, but we normally would give this. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, this is ridiculous. And for $40,000, if there's a potential to give me a brain bleed, even though I don't, like, of course I'm going to say no to this. And so what I found was I actually had more, more a part of the conversation as opposed to an insurance situation where they just do it. Like they just do these things, right? And so I think it's actually a better experience being uninsured in that situation. One other quick one is, as a follow-up, I had a cardiology visit. Cardiologist was like, hey, I'm going to give you an imaging. So I went and got a stress echo test. And he's like, typically if you had insurance, I'd ask you to come back into the office so we can talk about it. In essence, what that meant to me is something else to charge for. But he's like, since you're uninsured, is it okay if I just give you a phone call? And I'm like, yeah, for sure. You can give me a phone call. One is I don't have to spend, an hour and a half of my day like going to a doctor's office and sitting in the waiting room, which is probably one of the worst things on the planet, is sitting in the waiting room at a doctor's office, right? And you don't have to charge me for it. But he did that because I don't have insurance. And so in essence, what we're doing is we're creating a doctor-patient relationship again, as opposed to a doctor health insurance plan relationship. I always say, you work for whoever pays you. And in the insurance system, an insurance company is paying the doctor. And so that doctor is working for the insurance system. In the crowd health system, I'm paying the doctor. So the doctor now works for me, right? And that totally changes the dynamic. And we have seen, people after people in a crowd health being like, it's incredible. Like my doctor has changed since I'm now paying in cash. Because it's now between me and him. I have to provide him, he has to provide me a really good service because I'm paying him. It's gone back to value for value, as opposed to that doctor just trying to maximize billing to an insurance company. And so again, we have found almost unanimously that you get better care under this scenario versus health insurance.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. I think that's definitely true, because you align everybody's incentives, or to put it more accurately, you get rid of all the misaligned incentives caused by fiat, which, I mean, sounds almost like I'm parodying myself by blaming everything on fiat. But if you think, yeah, it's true, just because it sounds ridiculous doesn't mean it's not true. It really is the fault of fiat. Everything bad is the fault of fiat, and Bitcoin fixes everything that's wrong with the world. It's just the way it is. You can laugh at it, but it's not going to stop it from being true.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I'm just, right now in the United States, we're going through what's called open enrollment, which is at the end of the year, every year, you kind of have to decide what you're doing for the following year for your healthcare expenses. We will probably double, maybe even triple over the next 2 to 3 months at Crowd Health, which is an exciting thing, mostly because people are opting out of, Obamacare, health plans, and opting in, or their corporate, health insurance, and opting into Crowd Health. So if anybody's listening who's in that situation, we'd love to have at least a conversation with you to see, where you're at, what your situation is, and see if we can help you out, because we'd love for you to join kind of the revolution to change the way that we do healthcare in this country. And, you can go at all the reviews online, whatever, like we treat our people well. We love each other well. We are a community of people who are trying to change healthcare, trying to change the monetary system. And so as I've kind of said in the past, like I started Crowd Health to burn down the healthcare system so that people can have a real relationship with their doctor, burn down the monetary system so the government can stay out of our money, and enable people to, as I mentioned earlier, live to be, 80 or 90 years old and still be able to run around the backyard with their kids. Like, and if you're passionate about any one of those three things, then, I think our community is something that you could benefit from, and we could benefit from you being a part of our community. So we'd love to have you, SAIF, SAIF is the code, and you get 6 months for $99 a month, which is a hell of a deal, and you get to be part of this community. So we'd love to have you.
Excellent. Yeah. And I strongly recommend it as well.
Who knows? SAIF could be one of the ones helping you fund your next pregnancy or something like that. So, it's amazing to me because I do a lot of the crowdfunding. So I go through our list and say, okay, this person's going to help this person. This person's going to help this person. It's still something I do even as the CEO, because I think it's that important. But the people I see who are funding each other's healthcare expenses, like you have individual people reaching out to you and help. And if I could only say to some people like, hey, Saifedean or Breedlove or Marty or Jimmy Song or, other people who I can't mention that would blow your mind, like who are members of Crowd Health. But it's the type of people who you're seeing on Twitter or elsewhere, or all the, big media companies, they're on there. I'm blown away by the people who are helping others with their healthcare expenses. And it is some of the heroes of, I know mine, and I think yours as well, based upon some of the tweets that I've seen, leading the way in freedom and liberty and fighting back against some of the tyranny of government intervention. And so I'm honored to be in community with some of those people. So I'm hoping I can have some more of them, on my podcast, and they'll actually come out and say that they're Crowd Health members, because it's not right for me to out them. But it's an incredible group of people who've gotten together and are in this battle together. So we'd love for you all to join us.
Excellent. Now, the question that we keep getting, I keep getting from a lot of my listeners is, when are you going to expand outside the U.S.?
Yeah. One of the things we don't want is people to submit fake bills. If you're like, oh, well, I tore my ACL and it's $30,000. So, Crowd Health members pay for it. We have a really good system in the United States for identifying those, so that we can keep the fraud out of the system. And so once we can figure out how to do that in, other countries, we will expand. And now that we are no longer relying upon a fiat rails, payment rails, and it's now on a Bitcoin payment rails, the payment side has resolved itself. So we can get paid, by anybody. It doesn't matter if you're in El Salvador or the United States or Zimbabwe. So we figured that part out. The next question is, how do we validate that the bills that you're submitting are real, true bills? Because I don't want to have the community pay for fake bills. So we're trying to figure that component out. So if anybody who's listening to that, who's really, really smart, that can help us with that, we'd love to figure it out, because we've got a lot of people that internationally are asking for this, especially people in, high inflation type of environments who are just feeling like, this is terrible. So we're working on it.
Excellent. Yeah, well, I wish you the best of luck on that. I think a lot of people would like to join it. And I think, I don't think the insurance industry is as bad anywhere as it is in the US. The US is number one when it comes to how terrible the insurance industry is, but still, this is just so much better than all the other ways of paying for healthcare, in my opinion. So I wish you guys all the best as you take over the world. And, with Bitcoin, that makes payments a lot easier internationally. You're not going to have to do an international wire every time.
Yeah. No, it's instantaneous. That's the beautiful thing about Lightning is somebody can be in, Johannesburg, and I can get them money almost instantly. And so that's the beauty of the Lightning Network, and one of the reasons why we're using it. I think this is a better rail system, if I can call it that, than the fiat rail system. And it's only a matter of time before more industries, not only just healthcare, will realize that.
Yeah, I hope so. All right. Well, Andy, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time, and thank you for everything that you do at Crowd Health. I wish you guys all the best. Anything else you want to tell our listeners about your website, where to find you?
Yeah, joincrowdhealth.com is our website. Twitter, we have actually 2 Twitter accounts now. It's Crowd Health BTC is our Bitcoin Twitter account. So we're focusing on all things Bitcoin, Lightning. Once this interview goes up live, we'll repost it on that one. Or Join Crowd Health is our other one, which is a little bit more of a general. One of the things I've found is our system is so different than health insurance. I have to step function this. I have to get people understanding what we do as an organization, just and how much better it is than health insurance. And then once I got them there, then I can take them into the orange pill them into the Bitcoin community. And so trying to convince somebody who is not a Bitcoiner to not only change the way that they pay for healthcare, but also change the way that they think about the world and in a low time preference way is too big of steps. So I've kind of taken a step function approach to this. So I'm using our two different Twitter accounts to help me do that. But join both. The information is not duplicative. So we'd love for you to join us there too. Lots of fun conversation that happens on Twitter and our account. So we'd love for you to join us.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Andy. Have a good day.
Thanks, brother.